Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78. And we all fell in love with things during the pandemic, things that we probably never expected that we would just because the world shut down. And my friend Veeda Bybee came up with a excellent concept about blending musical theater and movies into cooking. And that's where she came up with this lovely, lovely book called A Few of My Favorite Things. I'm gonna make sure I get the whole title correct here. Recipes inspired by family-friendly musicals. How you doing, Vita?
I am doing really well. Thank you for having me on your show.
I love that. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me on the show. But I love the fact that you, like so many others, found something perhaps that you didn't know that you loved during the pandemic. You hear about different stories, but I love the stories about people who find something either that they lost, that they didn't know that they liked, or what have you. You kind of had that journey during the pandemic to help find this book that you eventually turned into a book, but like the premise of Friday movie nights and pairing it with food and all that stuff. Is that right?
Yes, we took it really seriously. We were social distancing, and and I value my time with my family, but
Sure.
I wanted to make it just what's something that we could do that wasn't that intensive too. That we could do from home, and watching musicals was it's already kind of planned out for you. Like obviously we made the recipes and that did take time, but the that active gathering it was actually pretty easy. Just we watched the show together.
Right, but I love the journey that you mentioned
Yeah.
in like the introduction where you grew up kind of loving theater and then you didn't love theater, and
Yeah.
that's your story to tell. But you want to talk a little bit about that journey of why you didn't like it to rediscovering it all over again? I mean, sound like by way of your kids kind of forcing you by them just gravitating towards theater and wanting to watch it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love origin stories. And so in the introduction for the cookbook, I talk about how in high school and growing up, I was a big fan of musicals and I lived in Northern Virginia all through high school. So we went to some really great productions of Beauty and the Beast and Phantom of the
Mhm.
Opera in the Kennedy Center. And I went with a friend. I was like their summer guest to the Shenandoah University. And I saw so many musicals on the college production and they just really captured my heart. But as I got older, I think I just became aware of just the lack of diversity in the stories and casting, and so I kind of stepped back for them. I didn't really want to have them a part of my life. I kind of was like, I'm not going to watch them. But I'm a mom, and my kids were the ones that changed. They were really attracted to community theater. I had
Mhm.
my two oldest at the time. They wanted to be in the theater productions of like School of Rock or Mary Poppins, and
I
that
mean,
was
all
really
the
funny.
things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it kind of it's like it started softening my heart. But so during the pandemic, I we were what should we watch, and Hamilton was coming out in Disney Plus, so we decided to make it
Wow.
a moment. And it was Hamilton. That show has been in our heads for years because of the music. None of us have seen it up until then, though. We were very familiar with the soundtrack because my teen at the time, tween actually, she
Mhm.
was very obsessed, and as were most of the world,
For sure.
But it wasn't until I saw the whole production on stage with the whole cast on there, it was just very powerful for me. And I decided, like, I think I'm going to give musicals a chance again. And so,
Because
starting,
of the diversity on stage that you saw?
yeah, and the
Yeah.
music just moved me, and the themes, and just the storyline that we can do things, and yeah, so it wasn't like I wanted to do food and musicals together at first. I thought we're just gonna watch musicals. So
Yep.
we watched Hamilton. We watched I think we watched The Sound of Music next. But we love food in our family, so I decided to let's make something from that. And so from that, we thought let's make this a regular occurrence. So it took me like about three shows, and I thought we're gonna do this. We're gonna commit. So we did it for a year.
And that's so fun. I mean, the book itself is beautifully done as far as the photos and the recipes and the little anecdotes there. Were you aware when you were like kind of shunning musicals? Was that a active choice that you made, or did it just all of a sudden one day you're like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't need to watch them," just for one reason or another?
It was probably a combination of those things. Maybe I think, yeah. And then for some reason, they just didn't feel very, very cool or something too. So like, I'm just not gonna. we're not going to watch the musical theaters. We're not going to watch the musicals. But then I
And
realized my kids. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, then my kids, we weren't even watching some of them watched some of the earlier Disney films, but we just didn't even watch Disney cartoons really. So I was actually kind of shocked because I grew up with those things. That was just embedded in my soul. So I was surprised where my, then I guess she might have been 10, but she's never seen The Little Mermaid. And I thought, like, really, I didn't even realize that.
Wow. So you kind of rediscovered all of these things along with your kids, your family, watching these. So did you make the food and had the food while watching the movies or musicals, or did you do it afterwards? How did the like run through the Friday night, if you would?
Yes. And sometimes we would do it on Saturdays because not, but it was like
Yeah, life gets in the way,
Goal
right?
Friday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we were home a lot and my kids were home, we would make the food and I would spend time researching, thinking about it. So we'd have it for dinner right before the musical. So it's kind of like we'd eat the meal and then we watch the show. But it was fun to talk about it. You're like, oh, what should we make? What should we watch? But it was something, and some things we would do, we'd have snacks, so we would watch it, we'd eat during the show. Like not every night was a full blown dinner. And I think that's really important for for those who want to make the recipes too. It's not a theme where you have to have a full course of an appetizer. It's just like do what you can, do one
Sure.
recipe from that, and that'll work.
You researched something near and dear to my heart, Chicago.
Okay.
And well, you didn't research Chicago. You just found out Chicago played an important part in the musical of Grease and everything that kind of the epicenter of Grease and the food that you found. You want to run through that little story and what you found as the entry for the book from Grease?
Yes, so Grease plays a part in my life too. I was in our production of Grease in high school. I'm
Okay.
not very talented or dancing wise or singing, so I was just in the choir, but I did the art
Hey,
production
that's
for our
good
high school
enough.
play.
That's more than I
Yeah.
do.
I was able to help with the set design, so it was just so fun. And then my husband actually in his high school production, he was in Grease as well. So it's kind of this family thing, like, oh, we have Grease in our in our history, in our DNA. But when I was researching Grease, I wanted my kids actually have never seen the John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John version. We just have watched the Grease live version,
Right.
and that was kind of fun. Sometimes things that we grew up with don't actually resonate with younger generations.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so like I watched. I'm jumping, but I watched Labyrinth. We watched Labyrinth for one of those, and I love
Yep.
David Bowie. My
Yeah,
kids were
me
like, "This
too.
is so weird,"
Never Ending
But like,
Story, The Goonies.
yes.
I'm trying to get my kids to love all those.
But so having the more recent version, I think it helped them appreciate it too.
And so, what did you find out in terms of Greece itself, the story?
Yeah, so it was fun to find out because I don't think that it ever mentions that's in Chicago. But when I was researching, looking at different things, like, oh, this is based in Chicago, Rydell High. I think is it named after a singer? I can't remember
Oh,
in the
I can't.
play,
I don't
but
remember the name, the where they got the name from, but definitely. I also met the playwright years ago who came into a place I was working, and we talked. And yeah, it's about Chicago, teens
mhm.
from Chicago. Like all of that is from, and it's actually, as it turns out, at the time I was living next to the high school that he wrote about. It's
Oh
Taft
my
High
goodness.
School in Chicago in the Norwood Park neighborhood, and that's what he wrote about. And all those things. The reason why the city didn't allow them to film it in Chicago because Chicago back then was a different mayor who didn't believe that people should film movies here. He believed people should come here and see for themselves, and also the teens that were doing because Grease the play is a little bit different than Grease the musical in terms of adult themes. Let's just say and they didn't like that, so they didn't want to be part of it. So I just thought it was funny. But what did you come up with in terms of the food for Greece?
So I did a lot. I'm sorry, my earbuds keep popping out here. I
That's
did a
okay.
lot of things from that time period. So they mention the like the Coke floats. Well, it wasn't the Coke floats, but it's the chocolate cherry float.
Chocolate
And
cherry floats. Yeah,
yes, yes. And I am kind of obsessed with those soda shops of yore. I wish they exist still.
I
But
know,
that'd be
right?
just so fun. Like I don't know what a black tap is. Like I want to try these things. And I'm kind of surprised because soda is a very big part of our culture. Like why can't we combine that with ice cream again?
Yeah,
But
I
so
agree.
that was fun to look up and recreate. There's all the diner scenes because Back in those days, going to the diner was a big hangout. So that's
Hmm.
where the majority of the food comes from. There is the Polar Burger. They all meet at the diner, and so they go and they have that's one of the menu items. I think it's ordered in the show,
Hmm.
but it's just fun. That 1950s diners food, which was very not just popular for the time, but it is like a cultural landmark of like what America was and it still is. We are known for our hamburgers. Maybe not so much for our ice cream floats, but still,
Hamburgers. Yeah.
hamburgers for sure. Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned the diner scenes. They're not far from Taft High School. There is
Okay.
a place called Superdog, and Superdog has been around for 80 years and opened up right after World War II. But it's a drive-in where you drive up to the little like things where you push the button and they come on the intercom and they ask you what you want and you tell them what they want and they bring it out to you either on a tray or in a bag and then you can eat it in your car. So I don't think there's any coincidence that that story you just told in Superdog in relation to where the high school is, it's about a mile away. So
Okay.
and it was the outskirts of Chicago back then. It was like nothing else was beyond this diner. So very fun story either way. We can talk about a bunch. What was some of your favorites when you were doing all this research?
So there is a musical I hadn't seen before called Bugsy Malone.
Hmm.
And this is a musical about New York. And the really fascinating thing about this show is that they're just all kid actors. So they're being like mobsters and they're singing the songs, they're dancing. It's a diverse cast too, which was really impressive for the time. And I was just so blown away by the whole production for ammunition, because it's a mobster movie and they
Sure.
talk about things, but they
Hmm.
use whipped cream. So I had recipes that have like the banoffee pie. You can use that whipped cream because they would. So instead of like when they go and do shootouts, they'd spray whipped cream with ammunition guns or just throw pies, and that was so fun to see on film, but also pretty impactful, like how violent it could have been.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but that was really fun. I really enjoyed that musical a lot. The music, my kids, there's a song, something about being a boxer, and they sing it. They sing it all the time. It's pretty cute.
And do you have a specific musical number out of all of them that stands out above the rest, or or maybe perhaps even that it affected your family in a way that you never thought you would see and it surprised you?
Yeah, so they have never seen Singing in the Rain, and that was one of my favorite musicals growing up. So
Classic, right?
yes, and I think it's one of my top favorite musicals. I just love the music and the humor of that show, but also just this great energy that it has and how music really just moves the movie along. So it was really fun for them to watch, to like see the Good Morning number. But I think the kids really love the Moses song, and that was just so funny for them, just to see. And there's really not that many props, and it's not like a huge cast number. It's just a few of them, but
Yeah.
that was kind of powerful how just those few actors could make such a great impactful scene.
So at the time you were gathering this info and starting this, before even a book was on your mind, I'm sure, your family and every other family in the world for that matter were dealing with the pandemic and figuring out like what to do. Like our family, we watched the entire Marvel universe. I was out
Okay,
cold,
yes,
but we watched because everybody was like, well, we got nothing but time. So let's watch it from like not the way they were released, but the way they were intended to be told, which is like,
okay.
I don't know, like 8 movies or something, 12 movies, whatever. So everybody did that thing, but with you and doing this and now it's a book, is there a fond memory or like what did it do for your family to not only start this journey but then you turned it into a story that you are now telling the world? Like what did it do for you and your family?
I remember having this moment. We were watching Fiddle on the Roof, and it's a long musical. And I have at the time, I have teenagers, and I was like, they're
Mhm.
watching this 3 hour movie, and that was really impactful on me to think that they were into the moment, of an older film, and they were moved just as I was moved, and so that was eye opening to think that, you know, their generation, we can still bond over the same things. I think a lot of families, parents lease the idea of like, oh, how can I relate with my kids, or what can we share this together? So that was a really fun moment to watch Fiddle on the Roof together, which I had never seen either, actually.
Yeah.
So it was really bonding, and it was something really simple that we actually just did in our house. I feel like it did take time to work up to that though,
Oh,
so,
sure.
we can't, it's like we didn't jump in watching Fiddler on the Roof, but but it wasn't like that too far off. But it was awesome to see the change, and, they look forward to that too. It's like, oh, they want to hang out with us and watch this movie together.
I know, isn't it funny? Like you think about the pandemic, and yes, it was awful in so many ways. But if you were lucky enough to be hunkered down with your family and you liked your family,
Yeah,
and it was a really intense bonding time that we probably, God willing, no pandemic way of doing it again. But to be, you know, with people for so long and to bond over things that are scary out in the world. So you hunker down and you have your core with you and you watch these things that you can escape a little bit from reality. Like that might not ever happen again in our lifetimes, and let's pray that it doesn't because of a pandemic, right? But like your whole family, it's not just like, oh, this one kid's at soccer, the other kid's at basketball. Like, nope, everybody was home all day long. There was good and bad to all of that. But that bonding, I think about that now, a few years removed, and that bonding time was just so special. So I imagine that's why this book it comes off that way when you're flipping through the recipes and seeing the passion that you put into it. It just seems very special.
thank you for saying that. We looked forward to it. I felt like every day was Blur's Day. Tuesday felt like I didn't know what days was
Yeah.
what, but we looked forward to the weekend, and it was a bright spot in our kind of just hard week of home learning from home and just trying to do everything that everyone else was doing too.
Is there a recipe that stands out where you still, well, first of all, have you made any of these recipes since you did the book?
Yes, yeah. Well, I made one to show you all, but I a lot of those recipes we make quite often. Like it's the titles of a few of my favorite things, in reference to musicals, but they are some of my favorite India recipes as well. So the like the wonton recipe, that's passed down from my mom, and
Yeah.
we make those all the time. Lunar New Year is coming up, and so every Lunar New Year we have like a big celebration gathering, and I make those every year, and that's just kind of my contribution, and the kids love making them and stuff too. So that's a very special recipe to me.
And you said you made one for us. Do you have one that you can show right now?
Yeah. So just on
Oh
my
yeah, let's see it.
we're in my kitchen here, but let
That's okay.
me
We go
grab
for a
this
little
here.
ride.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm just turning around. So
No
this is
problem.
the cast iron skillet chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, that looks
Um,
good.
and if you can see, like, it's in a cast iron. You don't have to make it in a cast iron, but I think it does elevate it because when you cook things in cast iron, it makes the edges like crispy, and it's just really fun too. And so this is a reference for Tangled. Um,
Okay.
if you watch that Disney film, Rapunzel uses this cast iron as a weapon, and I think every kitchen should actually have a cast iron. It's like not the most attractive tool, of course, but I do believe that they're so versatile, and
Yeah.
like
We
they
have
should
a
be in
my
every wedding registry. So
Yeah, my wife is a big believer in it. Do you by chance have
there you go.
a knife near you?
I do, yes.
Yeah, do you
What
mind
are you
cutting
doing?
into it and then you can like hold up a piece like
Okay,
this just to see the
yes,
side? Why not? Since we're just us girls talking here. I thought maybe you can just, I know I can't try it, but at least you can see like what it looks like from the side angle and all that stuff. But is that
sure,
one of
yeah.
is that one of your favorite ones to make
This is so
outside of
easy.
the
Yes,
wontons and the things you just talked about?
yeah. And this recipe, it's not very intensive at all. But if you have that cast iron skillet, you just cook it in there, and it doesn't, and you get a cookie right away. So
Oh yeah,
I
okay.
am using well, you can't tell, but I'm using like a little plastic rag because I don't want to scratch the
Oh
cast
sure.
iron.
Yeah.
But here is like there's the wedge.
Oh yeah, look at
So
that. Oh, that looks good.
out here in
Thank
the
you for
West,
doing it.
they have these recipes called pazookies, and they're a variation. It's pretty much the same thing. It's and you can make this. Some people like them really gooey, and so you can cook it for less time, and it has a more the gooey texture. This one is a little more done. And, there's a lot of variations, but out here that's the pazookies are pretty much these cookies with ice cream on top. So
Oh, well, yeah, no, can't go wrong with ice cream and cookie, right?
yeah.
Uh, as far as doing all of these recipes and is there a one that speaks to you more than anything else, or is it the ones that you described earlier as far as what you grew up with and things like that?
There's so many, and I feel like I just give recipes all the time, and that's the great thing about food. It's kind of like music, where in a way every single song has ever been written about love or about heartbreak, but yet we still create new ones, and I think it gives an opportunity to connect with people in different ways too. So, yeah, so the recipes like there's a boiled potato recipe, and it's delicious. Like you just kind of steam it in butter and like a little bit of water, and we eat that for St. Patrick's Day because
Oh,
we're a
yeah.
biracial family. So my husband's part Irish, and so that's just kind of fun to have both of those holidays in our family. So and my kids I love potatoes. Like I have family in Idaho, so
Yeah.
it's a very simple one, but it's delicious.
And you can do, I mean, a potato can turn into anything,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Um, were you much of a baker prior to doing all this and a cook?
Yes. So years ago before I mainly write children's books. I'm a writer, but before that I wanted to have a food blog, and I had a food blog for a couple of years, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. So I actually do have some background in food writing, and I went to conferences, I took classes.
Ah,
It was a lot though, and so I decided like this isn't my time, and I kind of let it go. But I actually love how I was able to return to that, and I think we do that with our life. It's like we're not just one thing, and like
no.
what are we attracted to, and we never know what is going to come from that. So it's really it was really surprising when this project came about, but at the same time it wasn't, because it's part of who I am. I love food. All my writing in fiction or even nonfiction, I read about people who've been really instrumental in food work
Yeah.
too as well. So yeah, it's I guess it's one of the themes that really connects me.
Almost like a full circle moment for you to be able to scratch that old itchy passion that you had years ago to be able to do it now. And the book is beautiful. Again, the name of the book is A Few of My Favorite Things. I'll put the title up here. I'll also put a nice little graphic in, so I'm not doing this on the camera, but because it was probably a little blurry, I didn't hold it. There we go. Vita, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. Is there a website you want people to go to for the book specifically?
Right. Well, you can buy the book anywhere books are sold. Barnes and Noble, Amazon. You can also find me online at VedaBybee.com, which is my name. And
Mhm.
then I'm on social media, on Instagram, same handle. But, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to dive. I'm definitely going to do the grease ones, but I mean, all of these look fantastic. The Sky Dome strawberry milk. I mean, come on.
Oh yes.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you so much. And is there a musical movie or anything that you got planning coming up before we say goodbye?
Well, we watched Wicked over the holiday break, and that was fun. It's coming in on TV.
Yes, what are
So,
you going to make?
well, I have a bonus recipe for a Wicked mint pie that's online, and that's we'll
Oh,
probably make that again. So it's like a chocolate custard that's mint, and then the whipped cream you can either do pink or green, and then so it's both ways, and you can sprinkle like little chocolate chips that kind of look like witches hats, and either like mint pieces too. So it's kind of a fun plan, the pink and the green, um, and the
very
chocolate too.
timely.
But
Yeah, well
yeah,
done. Just in time for Valentine's Day for people who might want to
true.
bring up their game a little bit.
That's a good
Vita,
point. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.